Hi, I'm Jade, and 3 days ago, I closed a $1.69 billion deal. Yes, billion with a B. 3 brutal months. No weekends. No sleep. Just me, a mountain of paperwork, and a dream that wouldn't let go.
And today?
Today was supposed to be the celebration. I stood near the podium, wearing a crisp black suit I'd ironed myself that morning. Notes in one hand, a quiet kind of pride in the other. Behind me, the big screen read, "Welcome to the future." My initials were at the bottom, my signature, my strategy. My heart wasn't racing from nerves. It was pride. I'd earned this moment. And then the door opened. 20 minutes late. My mother, CEO Emeritus, board member, gatekeeper of all family glory, walked in. On her arm, my sister, Zania. Perfect Zania. In a white suit and red heels. Her hair slicked back like she'd just walked off the cover of Forbes Women. People shifted. Cameras turned. Mom walked straight to the mic like she still ran the place. "Sorry we're late," she smiled, tapping the mic like she owned the sound. Traffic was murder. Then she glanced at the audience. And what a moment this is. A historic deal for our family, our legacy. I stood still. My name was on every folder in this room. And then she said it. This wouldn't have been possible without the vision, brilliance, and heart of one woman. "Let's hear it for my daughter, Zania." Applause. Scattered. Confused. Then building. I didn't move. Mom turned toward me just long enough to pat my shoulder. And none of it would have been possible without her loyal assistant, Jade. The room froze. 40 people. Board members. Press. Clients from Europe. People who'd seen my name. People who knew what I'd done. But in one breath, my mother wiped me off the map. Zania stepped up, grinning. Took the mic like it was her crown. "Thanks, Mommy," she giggled. "This has been an amazing journey." She mispronounced the client's name. Called one exec David. His name was Donald. Tried to quote the contract and butchered the numbers. I didn't speak. I didn't stand. I just sat back down slowly and placed my work tablet in my lap. And I opened it. Under the table. No one noticed. Except the system. One file sat there. Waiting. Something I built years ago. Clause 9.22, emergency lockdown. A security trigger I wrote into our infrastructure when I rebuilt the company's systems. Back then, they called me paranoid. But today, it felt like a parachute. I glanced up at my mother, her smile smug. At Zania, still stumbling through numbers she hadn't read. And I thought, maybe this wasn't revenge. Maybe it was exposure. They always called me the shadow. Always said Zania was the star. I whispered in my head as the applause thinned. Let's see what happens when the sun goes out. I tapped one line. And the system didn't crash. It vanished. The screen behind Zania froze mid-slide. The word legacy stuck on the edge of a transition. Then black. A pause. Then static. Then, across the room, screens went dark. Tablets shut down. The company's global feed collapsed. Behind her, red text blinked. Unauthorized access. System frozen. Zania froze too. At first, she laughed. "Just a tech glitch, folks. We'll be back in just a sec." Her voice cracked on the word section. She looked around, searching for someone to save her. Her eyes found me. I didn't blink. Didn't move. Just closed my tablet. No rush. No reaction. Executives were whispering now. Confused. Nervous. Is this part of the demo? Is this a simulation? And then someone's tablet lit up red. Access denied. Signatory breach detected. I stayed seated. My mother turned to look at me. For the first time in years, her smile was gone. She stepped toward me and whispered, "What did you do?" I stood up slowly, adjusted the sleeve of my blazer, and said calmly, "You'll need someone higher than the assistant for that." And I walked out. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam doors or raise my voice. I simply walked through the boardroom, down the hall, past the cameras still trying to figure out what just happened. While everyone else stared at frozen screens, I headed to the one place that mattered. Server control. It's a glass-walled room tucked into the second floor, cold, quiet, designed for precision. Mallory Chun, the lead compliance officer, was already at her station when I walked in. She looked up, didn't even flinch. "We've seen this before," she said. "You tested it 2 years ago." I nodded. Clause 9.22. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard, pulling up the archived logs. There it was, my signature, the timestamp, the internal review stamp. Fully legal. Fully binding. The clause had one job: protect the company from internal misconduct that could damage shareholder trust or misrepresent leadership authority. In simpler words, if someone tried to fake ownership of work they didn't do, I could shut the whole thing down. And I just had. The clause suspended all back-end systems, froze the client portal, and locked high-level operations into administrative review. But only one person had the master override key.
Me.
I hadn't needed permission to activate it. I'd been given that authority back when I rebuilt the infrastructure during our last audit cycle. Ironically, the person who approved the clause was my father. He never read it. He'd skimmed the draft, nodded over it during a long document review, and signed. He thought it was just another backup plan for external threats. He didn't realize he was handing me the fuse.
And now?
The foundation of his billion-dollar celebration was locked behind a fingerprint. Mine. I didn't smile. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accuracy.
Mallory studied the logs.
Everything triggered cleanly. You even routed contract control into an independent holding vault. I nodded again. Maris and Valen Private Group, I said. Set it up last year. Quietly. She gave a low whistle. This is elegant. I built it to be quiet, I said. To leave no room for arguments. Because I knew one day they'd try to erase me again. I just didn't know it would happen in front of cameras. I looked through the glass wall. Downstairs, the boardroom was chaos now. Executives huddled. Assistants ran around, whispering into phones. Zinnia was pacing, still smiling too wide, still pretending to be in control. And Mom? She was staring at the black screen like it had personally betrayed her. I didn't feel smug. I felt still. Because this wasn't the explosion. This was the click. The quiet moment where everything turns before anyone realizes it's already falling. Back then, they called me paranoid for writing this clause. Today, it felt like insurance. And it had just paid out. I stood in the server control room, still watching the mess unravel downstairs. The screens were dark. The emails were frozen. The system wasn't down. It was just locked. Every high-level file, every access portal, every contract in progress, sealed in a vault I designed years ago. For this exact reason. At the time, people rolled their eyes, called me overcautious. But I knew. Not because I expected sabotage from hackers, but because I expected betrayal from people with the same last name. My family had always been skilled at smiling while cutting you off at the knees. I just learned how to stand still while they missed. That morning, I didn't walk into chaos. I walked into confirmation. Because when I hit that trigger, I didn't just freeze the company's outward systems. I activated a deeper archive. A backup, buried beneath 3 layers of encryption. A silent vault filled with every edit, every access log, every redacted file tied to my name. And everyone had a trail. I opened the drive and pulled up the audit program. There it was. 3 years of system overrides. Performance reviews where my name was removed from team leads. Contracts where I was replaced as signatory after final approval. Awards I'd earned, but never received. One file in particular stopped me cold. 2019 Western Markets Expansion. The project I'd spearheaded, nurtured, and closed. The one that put us on the global map. I was completely missing from the documentation. The internal presentation showed Xenia listed as lead negotiator. I was tagged as supporting admin. The kicker? She hadn't even been on the flight to Singapore. I remembered because I'd sat alone at the airport gate, eating a granola bar and reviewing final terms while texting her updates. She sent me back a thumbs-up emoji. That was the night I lost my voice in a 5-hour negotiation and still managed to close the deal at 3:12 a.m. local time. And she'd never even opened the contract. Yet here in our records, she was the hero. It wasn't a glitch. It was a pattern. And now that the system was frozen, the lies couldn't move either. I copied every audit log into a clean folder. Labeled it Timeline. I didn't add any commentary. I didn't need to. Facts speak louder when they stand alone. Next, I opened the team portal, not the public one, the internal channel where staff could review task trees and status reports. I uploaded 4 files. Each one timestamped. Each one tied to a familiar name. No warning. No announcement. Just facts.
Quietly. Precisely.
One by one, people began to notice. Messages started popping up in the compliance Slack. Is this real? Why was Jade removed from this file? Wait, did Xenia even do this one? And then, check the override logs. That was all it took. The spark had landed. And the fire didn't need oxygen, just exposure. Downstairs, I saw heads turning, phones buzzing, people shifting in their seats. Xenia's confident smile was now twitching at the corners. She was talking faster, gesturing more, but no one was listening. The truth wasn't loud. It was undeniable. They were realizing, all at once, that the assistant had built the house, and they gave the keys to the decorator. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for one full breath. This wasn't revenge. This was realignment. For years, they told me I was the support, that my name belonged in footnotes, that I was too quiet, too calculated, too stiff for the spotlight.
But now?
The spotlight was off, and all they could see was the blueprint, the hands that laid the bricks, the mind that structured the systems. The name they erased from the title was the one they built their fortune on. And now, they had to face it, in silence. I didn't expect her to be parked there.
Not like that.
Not in the executive lot. Not in yesterday's blazer. Not curled up behind the steering wheel like time had stopped. But that's where we found her. At 6:42 a.m., just before sunrise, 2 security guards ran past me toward the curb. She's in the car, one of them shouted. Someone call 911. I followed them. Slowly. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew. Something inside me knew.
Xenia.
Her shoes still on. Makeup smudged. Eyes barely open. Slumped in the driver's seat of her luxury coupe. Engine cold. Windows fogged up. She must have been there all night. A maintenance worker tried the door. It clicked open softly. That tiny mechanical sound. It hit harder than any shout. She didn't move when they called her name. Didn't flinch when the paramedics arrived. Just let them lift her out. One arm fell limp at her side, pale against the navy sleeve. Her face was too still, too quiet. No one noticed me standing there. And maybe that was the point. They all stepped aside like I was part of the storm they didn't see coming. The assistant. The one who didn't smile for the cameras. I followed the ambulance, but not with panic. Just focus. By 8:15, I was at the hospital. They handed me a clipboard. You're listed as her emergency contact, the nurse said. I nodded.
Didn't even blink.
A doctor came out 15 minutes later. She's stable, he told me. Severe stress spike. Blood pressure was dangerously high. Any known history of anxiety or trauma? I hesitated. What was I supposed to say?
Yes.
She's been performing a version of herself for decades, and last night, the curtain finally fell? She's been under pressure, I said. From people she couldn't disappoint. He nodded. like he'd heard it 100 times. Families like ours, they break people slowly, then call it strength. When they let me into her room, she was already hooked to IVs. Her chest rose in slow, even breaths. I didn't sit beside her. I stood near the window, watching the drip, watching her, a girl who was raised to be golden, to shine at all costs, even if it meant dimming every light around her. Her lashes fluttered once, then again. She saw me. Her lips parted. Her voice came out cracked. "I wasn't ready for that room," she whispered. "I wasn't ready for any of it." I turned my head slightly but didn't speak. She looked small, not like the brand they'd built her into, like the girl who used to cling to the piano bench when we were 7, pretending she was a prodigy, while pushing me off the keys. The same girl who once shoved me just hard enough down the stairs to secure the solo recital. And Mom said I tripped. "Why weren't you watching where you were going, Jade?" I hadn't thought about that moment in years, but now it came back full force, like a script I didn't choose. And here we were again. She hooked to machines. Me, still standing. But I didn't feel power. I didn't feel pity either. Just confirmation. This wasn't a collapse. This was a reckoning. And when I finally stepped out into the hallway, the silence followed me. Not heavy this time, just honest. It arrived the next morning. No knock. No courier signature. Just a plain envelope sitting on my doorstep with the corporate HR return address printed in the top corner. I brought it inside, closed the door quietly. I knew what it was before I opened it. Inside were 2 files. One stamped, Jade Marshan. The other, Zania Marshan. Personnel records. I laid them flat on the dining table, side by side. 2 lives. 2 names. 2 versions of truth. I opened mine first. And what I saw wasn't a file. It wasn't an erasure. Entire pages were missing, performance evaluations, project credits, strategic roles I knew I led gone. Black boxes covered certain sections. My name replaced with team contribution. Notes I'd written for the 2019 audit were tagged under Zania's initials. I flipped faster. Heart pounding. The 2017 Westward Commendation?
Gone.
My 2020 compliance restructure that saved us $8.2 million? Listed under Department Effort. And then the red stamp that broke me for a second longer than I expected. Filed under CZM Lead Strategist. Her initials. On my work. Then I opened hers. The file was thicker. Glossy.
Too polished. And fake.
It started at age 12. No mention of the 3 school transfers before that. No trace of the year she was homeschooled after the car accident. Her academic record was spotless. Too spotless. The internship letters? 2 were signed by mentors who were already dead before those dates. One of the companies didn't exist, just a shell site with stock photos and a disconnected phone number. The deeper I read, the colder it got. At the bottom of her file was a stapled footnote. A leadership initiative I built in 2014, my first big break. My name had been scratched out in red ink, replaced with hers. I pushed my palms against the table, steadying myself. It wasn't just her. It wasn't just favoritism. It was design. Deliberate. Someone had gone out of their way to reshape our entire professional history. Not just to lift her up, but to erase me completely. And there was only one man with the power and reach to do that.
Dad.
I stood, walked down the hall toward the family photo wall. There they were. Zania at graduation. Zania at the company gala. Dad. Always beside her. Always smiling. Only one photo showed me. Me and Grandpa. My hand on his. Both of us laughing at something off camera. That was it. The only one still untouched. I walked back to the den and laid out everything. Documents, timelines, photos, emails. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was evidence. A straight line of how far I'd come. And how many times they'd stepped over it. My voice was quiet when I finally spoke, Even though I was alone, he didn't just build her up.
He deleted me.
Not out of accident. Not out of love. Out of control. And this time, I wasn't going to ask for it back. The will reading was scheduled for 10 a.m., and 3 names weren't on the list. I arrived 10 minutes early, hair pulled back, navy dress, heels that didn't need to shout. No jewelry. Just Grandpa's old gold watch on my wrist. He gave it to me the day I graduated. Time, he said, is the only thing you can't fake. The receptionist gave me a nod and pointed toward a wood-paneled room. Simple.
Clean.
Legal books lined the shelves. A silence that wasn't awkward, just waiting. Zinnia was already inside. She sat stiff, shoulders tense, clutching a designer purse like it might keep her from falling apart again.
She didn't speak.
She didn't even look up. Dad arrived last. He didn't greet anyone. Just sat down like he always did, like the world would turn faster if he told it to. The estate attorney opened the file. This version of the will was updated 3 years ago, he said. It revokes all prior arrangements. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Confident. Still sure he'd hear what he wanted. To the staff of Mars Han Industries, the lawyer continued, a $1.3 million pension bonus shall be distributed to all employees with 10 years of service. Dad blinked. Just once. To Ridgeview Veterans Home, in honor of Jules Mars Han, $400,000. That was Grandpa's best friend. The one who covered for him in combat. The one Dad always pretended didn't exist. The attorney paused and opened the second folder. To my granddaughter, Jade Mars Han, I didn't move. Full controlling interest in the company bearing my name. Assets. Operational rights. Executive power. Effective immediately, as of this reading. The room didn't go quiet. It froze. Zinnia inhaled sharply, her nails digging into the leather strap of her purse. Dad sat forward now. Still no words. To Zinnia Mars Han, the lawyer continued. A private trust allocated for educational and rehabilitative purposes, in recognition of her challenges, and with hope for her clarity of future. Still no mention of Dad. No inheritance. No company stock. No parting words. Nothing. The lawyer flipped the last page. There are no further direct beneficiaries. Dad stood, adjusted his blazer like a man who still believed he had control. He didn't say a word. He just walked out. Door open. Door closed. The silence he left behind didn't hurt. It felt earned. Zinnia's voice broke the stillness, barely above a whisper. He still thought I needed saving. I looked at her. No anger. No pity. So did I said quietly. And that was it. No shouting. No applause. Only breath. And when I stood up, the room didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt balanced. The knock came just after sunset. Not forceful. Not uncertain. Just there. When I opened the door, she pushed past me without a word.
Zinnia.
Hair unbrushed. Eyes red. Shoulders tense like every nerve was about to snap. She dropped a folded paper onto the coffee table, the filing notice from the will reading. You had this, she said, her voice cracking. The whole time. I said nothing. You let me walk into that boardroom like a fool, she snapped. Let them talk over me. Let them laugh. You let me. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't let you do anything, I said calmly. You humiliated yourself, Zinnia. I just didn't clean it up for you this time. She turned sharply. Don't you dare make this about me. But it is, I said. It's always been about you. She flinched, but didn't look away. You think you're better than me? She hissed. Because you waited. Because you played the long game. No, I said. I think I'm tired. That stopped her. She sank into the armchair across from me, her hands curled tightly in her lap. You always acted like you were above it, she whispered. But you weren't. You were just waiting. Waiting to strike. I leaned forward slightly. You really want to talk about waiting? Let's go back. Her eyes darted up, wary now. Remember the Juve account? The one you lost 6 years ago? She nodded slowly. Dad blamed Karina, the junior assistant. She almost got fired. I paused. But I had the email. I knew it was you who missed the licensing deadline. Zinnia swallowed. You cried in my office for an hour. I continued, and I told Dad it was my fault. Her voice dropped. I didn't ask you to. You didn't have to. The room went still. Not angry. Just quiet. I covered for you, I said. Over and over. Not because I thought you'd return the favor, but because I hoped you'd eventually grow into the role they handed you. She rubbed her arms, like the room had turned colder. I always knew you didn't believe I could lead. I didn't want to see you fall apart, I said. But I couldn't let you burn the place down either. Her voice was barely audible now. Then why didn't you stop me? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I was tired of stopping everything. Tired of holding up a crumbling structure while being told I was just the scaffolding. She exhaled shakily. He told me I deserved it all, she whispered. Said I was born for it. That you were just there to support. I nodded. The assistant, I said quietly. She gave a sad laugh.
Yeah.
Then silence again. Finally, she looked up and said something I wasn't ready for. I didn't even know how to access half the systems. I memorized buzzwords, smiled for cameras, and prayed no one would ask the wrong question. I stared at her, not with resentment, not even pity, just understanding. She wasn't evil. She was a child given a broken script, told to perform. And somewhere along the way, she believed the story. I stood and walked to the kitchen, made 2 cups of tea. No words. When I handed one to her, she didn't say thank you. She just held it like it was the first real thing anyone had given her in years. It was late when I found the letter, tucked beneath a stack of old legal pads and project sketches in the bottom drawer of Grandpa's desk. No envelope, just a single sheet, folded twice, my name written across the top.
Jade.
The handwriting was unmistakable.
Steady. Bold. His.
I sat on the floor, cross-legged, heart thudding in a way that didn't feel like fear. It felt like truth. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And that's okay. I lived long enough to watch you carry fire and grace like they were the same thing. I know what they've done to you. The credit taken. The years stolen. The praise handed to people who didn't earn it. I saw it. But I also saw the one thing they never could touch, your integrity. You didn't chase the throne. You built the kingdom. That's why I left it to you. Because legacy doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one who does the work when no one's watching. My hand tightened around the paper. My eyes blurred. For the first time in months, maybe years, I let myself cry. Not from pain.
From release.
I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the drawer. Not to hide it. Not to bury it. To protect it. Later that morning, I walked into the boardroom again. Same room. Different silence. This time, it wasn't silence filled with doubt. It was one waiting for direction. I placed the binder on the table, my new proposal, the next phase. And for the first time, no one looked past me. No one waited for someone else to speak first. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to, because I wasn't proving anything anymore. I was simply leading. And as I looked out at the faces across the room, some still unsure, some newly respectful, I felt it. Not revenge. Not glory. Just power owned honestly. Outside the window, the sky was just starting to glow, soft pinks fading into silver. A new morning, a clean ledger, and a name no one would ever erase again.
Mine.